All right, so one of my favorite all-time squashes is Delicata. I love Delicata squash, and if you've never used it before, try and track it down because you can actually eat the skin. It's got a really sweet interior, but the outside can get like really crispy, and I love that. So today I'm gonna try the impossible, and I know it's the impossible because I'm a risotto whisperer. I'm gonna try and do a 15-minute risotto. So this is my fried rosemary delicata squash risotto. All right, Howard, you're gonna make history with me today.
Good luck. 15
minutes on the clock. We've got 3 pots, 3 pans, which I hardly ever do, and I'm just gonna kind of turn them all on to a pretty medium high to high heat, okay? And we're gonna start with this back one here, which is gonna be all about the stock. So you always gotta start with a really good stock. I've got some veggie stock here today, but you can use chicken stock, anything you got. I'm just trying to keep the whole thing kind of vegetarian. So I'm gonna add about 3, maybe 4 cups to this pot. And then I kind of want to enrich this stock. So I'm gonna add a little bit of squash flavor to it. So I'm gonna grab my delicata, and just like any squash or pumpkin, you gotta take out the seeds and the guts. So I always take off the sides like that, and then I cut down. Cool, and you've got the middle. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this out and just kind of scoop it, right? It's okay if you leave a little bit behind, but try and get as much of this out. The seeds you can obviously dry out in the oven, and it makes a really delicious snack, salad topper, garnish on top of soup, whatever. But today I'm gonna use all the seeds, all the guts to make our stock kind of a little bit more squashy, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, Howard?
It makes sense.
Really? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna grab all my squash guts and seeds, and you can just follow me, they're going right into my vegetable stock. And again, all that's gonna kind of just infuse like a tea and just make that delicious. So while that's going, we are gonna do the rice. And if you don't know what risotto is, it's a creamy rice dish, but there's no cream in it. It's got a little butter and cheese, but what really makes it creamy is the rice itself, the starch. So I'm gonna use half of an onion. You always start with an onion. I've got a red, but typically it's done with a white. And I'm gonna cut this onion as small as I possibly can. So I'm gonna cut little kind of strips, not going all the way through the onion, leaving the onion together still. And then I'm gonna cut those strips horizontally and then down. So you have kind of a really fine dice. And the reason why you want this is you kind of want the onion the same size as the rice itself. So it kind of melts into the rice. You don't really want to taste the onion. It's all about the rice. It's the rice show. So I'm gonna grab a little olive oil and go with a couple of tablespoons, and then all of those onions right in, right? It's a good handful. Now the trick to this is you don't want to brown the onions. You just want to sweat them. Sweating means we're taking out the moisture and we're not caramelizing it. So if it's on too high, you want to turn it off or turn it down, right? So just kind of keep an eye on those, sweat those out. And then I've got some brown rice. This is pre-boiled brown rice, and this will only take 5 minutes to cook. So I'm gonna add this right to my onions. It's about, I would say, a heaping handful per person. So I'm gonna do a couple of handfuls of rice, maybe a handful and a half. Beautiful. And this part's crucial with risotto. What we're gonna do is we're gonna toast the rice. So Howard, get into the pan here. We're toasting the rice in the actual oil itself. And this kind of gives a jacket of oil around each individual kernel of rice. And it really kind of allows the rice to be separate from each other instead of kind of gummy and gluey. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
I like to hear that.
I'm just trying to figure out how you're gonna do this with only 11 minutes left to go.
You'll see, but you know, oh, I need some white wine. Good. So we'll use this in a sec. While this is waiting, I've got a nice hot pan. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add olive oil to the pan, good amount. And I went outside earlier. Yes, still got it. And I got some rosemary. Love me some rosemary. So I'm gonna just kind of peel the rosemary off the stems. And then what you're gonna do is, in this hot oil, I want you guys to see this. Cool. I'm gonna tip all the oil to one side. So I'm gonna make kind of a pool of oil right over the heat. And then I'm gonna take my rosemary. I'm just gonna test one. You wanna hear it pop. Nope, not ready yet. So I'm gonna give it a second. Let's just check our rice. Okay, this has been toasting for a sec. So I'm gonna add just about a half a cup of white wine. Now, with risotto, every single time you add a little liquid, the wine or the liquid gets sucked up by the rice, and it also evaporates. So every single time you add a little bit, it kind of goes away into the rice. You can see it's already kind of dissipating. So this is exactly what we're looking for. It's kind of concentrating the sugars, and it's making it delicious. So when this is dry, we're gonna start adding our stock. And I think of rice as kind of like a loading bar in a computer. When it gets to kind of 90%, we want to stop. So just by adding a splash, and with this being pre-cooked, we're probably already at like 70 or 80%. Otherwise, Howard, I don't think I could have gotten this done. All right, so let's try the oil again. Rosemary in. Still almost there. There we go. See how you hear that? I'm gonna put the mic next to it and try not to burn my face off. So you want a little pops. It's like popcorn. There you go. So what we're doing is we're kind of infusing the oil with this rosemary. At the same time, we're crisping the rosemary. We're making it really crunchy and delicious. And what that's gonna do is flavor the oil, Jonah knows, and we're gonna have like a little crumble that goes over the top of this. So it's gonna be really nice. All right, I'm saving all my scraps as always, just pushing it all to the side, dropping a squash. Don't mind me. Off the ground. That was way before the 5-second rule. Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, so while we're waiting on that, the squash, I just put it on the flat side, and I just kind of cut little half moons. I'll probably only use half of this. But this is gonna be kind of the creamy, earthy, kind of fall, autumn texture that we're looking for. Look at these. You can toss these in a little olive oil, some smoked paprika, throw them in the oven and they crisp up. They're so good. If you're not eating potatoes, if you're kind of watching the diet, this is really a good solve. All right, so let's go back to our rice real quick. I know we're kind of all over the place, but you can see there's no more wine left. So that's a really good sign to start adding liquid. Do I have a ladle? I do. So I'm gonna take some of our stock, which has, it's got some seeds in there, so I'm gonna take something to strain that out. What do I got? Howard, what do I got? Spider?
The spider!
I found it! So I'm gonna take my spider and add some liquid. So it catches the seeds and the guts and just leaves some vegetable stock. And each time I'm just gonna add enough to kind of cover the rice. You can see it's kind of coming together. That's looking really good. How are we doing on time? 7 minutes? I'm not optimistic, but I'm not nervous. Okay, so next up, we're gonna take this rosemary out. Do you see this, Howard, how crispy it got?
That looks good.
It smells good too, right?
It smells really good.
So the rosemary is out, but what's left in the pan is rosemary oil. The oil took on all the flavor of the rosemary. So now the delicata goes in, and it's frying in rosemary oil. I mean, how good does that sound? It's gonna be amazing. I'm gonna add a little salt to that, and just kind of toss it through. You know me, I want a little chili. When I see something sauteing in olive oil, I want a little chili. So this is just a little Aleppo chili. And one of the first things I learned how to cook was risotto. I actually had it at University of Connecticut, which is my alma mater. And I was in a nutrition class and we made risotto, and I never had it before. I'd never heard of it before. It's never even been on my radar. And I tried a bite of it and I'm like, God, it was just rice, but it was so intense. And the flavor was so like unctuous and deep. And I just kind of fell in love with risotto. And ever since then, I mean, it's gluten-free. It's just one of those dishes that no matter what you have on hand, you can make something delicious. All right, so the squash is doing its thing. The risotto's doing its thing. We got our rosemary. And just what I'm gonna do with the rosemary, if you guys can see, just gonna try some. It's absolutely, it's like a chip. A little bit of salt, and I'm just gonna kind of run my knife once through it. And now we have kind of this perfect little garnish. Doesn't that look good, Howard? Do you want to try some?
I do.
Yes, yes. Not bad, right?
My hand is in the movie.
Awesome. All right, so that's doing its thing. That's almost done. Let's grab a plate. That's literally the stage that we're almost at here. Now, the final stage of any risotto is always the same. You gotta have butter and you gotta have cheese. I don't really know how to do it without those things. I've tried for vegan people to make risotto and it just doesn't come out right. So you've gotta have these things that kind of finish the whole thing off. All right, come back over here to the risotto, Mr. Howard. You see how it's looking dry again? So this is where I like to try the rice. I'm gonna hold it up to camera so you guys can see. Just give it a little try. Really good. We're at like 80%. So I'm gonna grab another ladle. This is gonna go right in. Beautiful. And that will be my final ladle. Now, one other trick you can do is when you look at Parmesan, and by the way, I've said this on the show a million times, do not buy Parmesan that comes in the tennis ball can. You buy real Parmesan, all right? Real Parmesan looks like a block. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut, see if I can do this, it's only a little nub. Come on. Come to me. Yes. So, this is the Parmesan rind. This thing is gold. You can throw it in your freezer. Next time you make a pot of beans, you make a soup, you do anything, you throw this in there. And it gives it this whole kind of Parmesan essence thing that is so damn addictive. I don't even know how else to describe it. So I'm just gonna pop this into the risotto. I'll fish it out later, but even just a couple minutes in there and it's game over. All right, look at that. Look at the squash. You see it crisping up? And you cut it so thin that it's literally almost done. I love that. All right, so butter, cheese. We gotta grate the cheese. I don't know if you guys can hear Jonah in the background, but he's sick. He's got a little bit of a cold. So we've been dealing with that all week, which has been great. So you can see why I need a big pot of risotto. All right, so I'm gonna grab a ton of cheese. I'll save a little bit for the garnish. This is, I love using microplane for this because it kind of acts like snow, super light. How we doing on time? 3 minutes, okay. Look, owie! I'm bleeding. It's the first time on the show. First time, but it's fine. Watch this, because we're basically done. Yeah, no problem. Okay, here we go. One-handed to finish this risotto because this hand is not suited for cooking at this point. So look at the inside the pot, Howard. Can you see the Parmesan rind? Yes or no?
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
All right, left-handed, I'm cutting this butter. Off the heat, always off the heat. I'm adding my butter and I'm adding some of my cheese. And at this point, you can fish out that little Parmesan rind. It's done its job. Even that minute, it's done its job. Come on, it's really hard to do this one-handed. There we go. All right, so now, I'm gonna take this risotto. Woo!
Oh, nice grab.
One-handed, baby.
Oh.
See the risotto?
Yeah.
Just kind of tossing it through. So the butter is melting, the cheese is melting, everything is just kind of working together, and this is where it becomes kind of creamy. You can beat this with a spoon if you don't have a cut finger. Awesome. Non-cut finger is going into the salt, seasoning that. One more kind of toss. I love making risotto. This is awesome. All right. Now, let's plate up. God, my left hand is getting, why does it always have to be my right hand that gets hurt? And this is just proof. Chefs cut themselves in the kitchen too. Granted, it was on a cheese grater, not a knife, but all my friends will hear that it was a big knife. Okay, here comes the risotto. Out on the plate, look at that. Cheesy, absolutely delicious. Anytime you see a risotto, if it comes from a grocery store, from a restaurant, wherever, you should be able to shake the pan or the plate, and it should fall kind of flat like that. Got one rogue seed in there. Come here. Get out of there. Awesome. All right, squash over the top. Look at this. That's probably way too much squash, but actually, looks really, really nice.
I don't know, I'm pretty hungry.
Yeah, that looks pretty darn good. Some of that fried rosemary. Yes, and then a little bit more of that cheese. You have to finish it with some olive oil. This is, again, all one-handed at this point. And that, my friends, is a fantastic plate of risotto. And how long? Woo! 26 seconds to spare and cut my finger. You know it can be done. I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe. This is delicata squash risotto with some fried rosemary. Watch it on Seconds, readyforseconds.com, or of course, you can check it out on Yumly. See you next time.